Jala, my name is Cassie Rippey, and I am the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Coquille Indian Tribe. It is my job to protect and manage cultural resources within the tribe's area of interest. Battle Rock falls into the area of interest for two tribes in Oregon, the Coquille Indian Tribe and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz. Battle Rock has been an important place since time immemorial. Known as Mah-Nah-Xhey-Sah, it is a place where mussels and other ocean resources are gathered. In 1851, it became known as it is today, as the site of an historic battle and massacre. A crew of 9 sailors, led by John Kirkpatrick at the behest of William Tichenor, landed with instructions to establish a mining town. They took refuge on the rock where the infamous battle between the sailors and the Quoh-To-Mah took place. Over 20 native people were killed, while 2 of Kirkpatrick's men were injured but survived and fled the rock 2 weeks later. In the years that followed that historic battle, many native people were marched north to the coast reservation, despite the lack of a ratified treaty, and the town was settled. Fighting continued between the settlers and the native people, resulting in many more deaths, including the lynching of 3 native men atop Battle Rock in 1856 and 1857. These men are buried at the site of their untimely death. Years later, one of those sailors from Kirkpatrick's crew, by the name of Jake Summers, married a Coquille-To-Mah woman named Betsy. Jake, Betsy, and their son Ralph Jr. are also buried on top of Battle Rock. Today, Battle Rock is still a culturally important place to the tribes, both for its traditional values and now as a cemetery. Visitors to the park are encouraged to exercise caution and respect for this sacred place and for those who are resting here.
Hi, my name is Jessie Jones, and I am the volunteer coordinator for Coast Watch. Coast Watch is an Oregon volunteer program where a volunteer adopts 1 mile of the Oregon coast and reports observations, changes, and anything notable through our website at oregonshores.org. Battle Rock Wayside is Coast Watch Mile 48. It is a beach with a fantastic rocky shore of large serpentine and basalt boulders right on the beach, as well as views of Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge in the near distance. During a low tide in the spring and summer, you can access rich intertidal areas teeming with purple and orange ochre sea stars and aggregating anemone. The sea stars, known as pisaster, are a species closely being monitored right now by volunteers up and down the coast, as they succumbed to a mysterious disease a few years ago. The anemone are a beautiful creature and are a predator. Below the water, they open their beautiful tentacles, looking like flowers, to capture their prey, like crabs. Above the water, they close up, looking like a soft green pebble. It is safe to gently touch the tentacles or green parts of these animals. Just don't touch them in the center, as this is their sensitive mouth. Keep a lookout for hermit crabs in the tide pools, too. They have adopted snail shells and other shells as their home. Birds that use the rocks as nesting areas and homes are seen here. Cormorants, common murres, gulls, falcons, eagles, and more are especially busy foraging in the summertime. You'll probably also see brown pelicans diving into the water. Sadly, dead birds can also be common on all beaches. Some of these deaths are natural, as birds are territorial and eat each other's food. Others are caused by starvation and also marine plastic and other causes. You're likely to see lots of bull kelp, large and whip-like and long. All of these, along with shells, are important to the fabric and ecology of the plants and animals here, so please look and observe, but only take with you the trash you may find. Thank you for visiting, and for more information and ways to help our Oregon coast, please go to oregonshores.org. Have a wonderful adventure.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Head, and I'm a marine biologist. I have volunteered and lived in Port Orford for over 10 years. For my graduate thesis, I studied the ecophysiology of marine invertebrates. One of the most widely studied marine ecosystems is the intertidal zone. The intertidal zone is where the land and the sea meet between the high and low tide zones. The intertidal zone is a complex ecosystem, is an inhospitable, changing environment, and is home to a wide variety of highly specialized organisms. At high tide, the intertidal zone is inundated with salt water, but is exposed to air at low tides. Intertidal organisms are adapted to tolerate the fluctuating conditions such as UV light, temperature, salinity, and moisture, as well as the high degree of turbulence in the intertidal zone. Intertidal organisms often occupy specific zones or niches depending on their adaptations and also to avoid predators. The splash zone is the highest and driest of the intertidal zones. Only organisms that can tolerate the most dry conditions live here. It is never fully submerged at high tide. Here you might find lichens, crabs, and barnacles. The high tide zone, or the upper intertidal zone, is inundated only at high tide. Organisms in this zone must be able to tolerate strong wave action and long periods without water. Organisms in this zone, such as limpets, chitons, mussels, and seaweeds, must be able to hold on tight. Many animals in this zone can close up or clamp down to prevent water loss until the tides come back in. The mid-tide zone, or middle intertidal, is a turbulent zone that is inundated and uncovered by tides 2 times per day. This is a rich zone where you might see anemones, barnacles, chitons, snails, crabs, sponges, limpets, sea stars, and many types of seaweeds. Some organisms occupy pools of water left behind, commonly known as tide pools, until the tides come back in. The low tide zone, or the lower intertidal, is home to many of the organisms seen in the upper zones, as well as soft-bodied organisms such as the large sunflower sea star, sea cucumbers, and nudibranchs that cannot tolerate the drier and harsher conditions of the upper zones. So, as you're strolling the beaches and rocky shores, don't forget to stop and take a peek around to see who's lurking. Ask yourself why each organism is where it is and what adaptations it might have to be there. Be careful where you step, leave critters where they are, and always turn rocks back over. Life in the intertidal zone is challenging enough.